Hello, everybody. Sports Reports as Ordered is coming at you. Mike Wilson in the building, Raphael Rutley across from me. We're going to talk to you tonight about that time of year that I love. March Madness is here. Finally! I had to suffer through October, November, and so on and so forth just to get here, and I'm happy, baby. Then we're going to talk about the bottom 6 teams in the NBA. We're going to talk about which one of them has the brightest future. What is the draft looking like? We might get into the coaches, just which of these teams has the best future. Then we're going to get into the, what I'm saying? We got Tank and Garcia coming up next month. This is going to be an epic fight, I think. And then we're going to talk about where the winner goes from there, who else is next on the list to fight. We're going to talk about these NFL transactions because everyone has been tagged. That's over with. We're in actual free agency now, and there has been some noise. And then we're going to close it out with Get It Off My Chest. So, Raf, how you doing, man?
Hey, man, I'm chilling. Like I said, we had to take we only got one episode in last week. Dad duty takes over. You got AAU basketball. I got multiple lacrosse leagues that my son is in. We were out there in the rain getting soaked on last Friday. My son's team won like 11-1 or 12-1. And if you don't know about lacrosse, it's one goal at a time. I was out there having a good time. My son out there, he plays defense. He's a big kid, like 5'10", 170. I don't know where he got that height from. He got that from the old ancestors, but he's out there, no shirt on, just elbow pads and his jersey. He's like, I want to look intimidating, Dad. I'm like, you're a 5'10", 13-year-old. I think that's enough. But we're out there, had a good time. All the parents out in the rain. It's a good time. It's a good beginning of the year. It's a good transition. Like we said, we transitioned to the NFL New Year. We transitioned to March Madness. We in the height of the NBA playoff run. It doesn't seem like a great time for sports because the NFL isn't front and center with games every week, and college football is on front and center with games every week. But it's a lot of gems if you really enjoy sport. There's a lot of gems in there. There's a lot of, a lot of interactions, a lot of transactions. And, we're here to bring you all of the information that you're not getting everywhere else. We're having that conversation that you might have with your barber or guys in the barbershop, like different kind of conversation, not just the same one over and over again. So I'm excited. Mike's a big college basketball fan. He talks about it all the time, talks about his Kentucky blue blood original. We've had these arguments and debates and conversations before. So he's going to lead us off with the field of 68. How you feel about it?
Y'all can tell I'm tired too, what I'm saying? Because I got the Kobe eyes going on right now. But you know what I'm saying? But yes, March Madness is here. I have been waiting. I was sitting there looking at these brackets, and one day, one of my goals in life is to sit in this committee room and figure out how they come up with these seeds, because I was trying to figure out why Texas A&M is the 7th seed. I was trying to figure out why Rutgers didn't get in. But at the same time, Rutgers don't be losing 13 or 14 games, and we might not have to have that conversation. I'm trying to figure out, because every other sport, especially the NFL, we talk about head-to-head. And I saw Clemson beat NC State 3 times, finish ahead of them, including winning by 26 in the ACC tournament. And NC State got in and Clemson didn't. So I'm just trying to understand how all this works. Now, I know Clemson lost to Louisville. They lost to Loyola Chicago. But regardless of their losses, when do we count the wins? I'm looking at the Big 12. I got West Virginia up in here with a 7-11 conference record. Now, I know that the Big 12 is the tough conference this year. It's like the basketball SEC. But can you beat somebody? But with that being said, I picked West Virginia to win in the first round. But, but can we stop with the 7-11 teams getting into the tournament? So I was just going to run down my Final Four real quick. So now, I ended up with Alabama in the Final Four, because when I look at their bracket, the South, it just seems as if they have the easiest road, which they should, because they're the overall number 1 seed. So they should, in theory, have the easiest road. I do think that Arizona could give them some trouble. Maybe Creighton turns into the team that everybody thought they were coming into the year. But when I look at the East, I'm looking at Purdue, and I say, Ooh, you are in trouble. You are in trouble, Purdue, because you potentially play Memphis in the second round with freshman guards. But they're not freshman guards in the sense of John Wall or De'Aaron Fox. These are just freshman point guards. So that might come back to bite them down the road because I was looking and I didn't realize that when Duke is healthy, because I was watching the selection show and I was watching ESPN and everybody was picking Duke to go to the Final Four. And I was saying, what do they see that I don't see? What they saw was that when Duke is healthy, they're 17-1. That's what they saw. You know what I'm saying? But I still don't got Duke in my Final Four. You know, I got them going to the Sweet 16, but, you know, we'll come back to that. So I got Kansas State as my sleeper as the 3 seed coming out of that region. Then in the Midwest, please let this happen. My Elite 8 is Houston and Texas. And the winner, guess what? The Final Four is in Houston. So, you know, I might even get a Texas A&M Texas matchup in the second round. So, you know, I got Houston pulling out the bracket there. So far, so that's Bama, K-State, and Houston. And then we go to the region of death. I don't know who Kansas pissed off. You know, they ended up with 17 quad one wins, 18 depending on who you talk to, which is the most any team has ever had since we initiated this system that I hate. But that's what they did.
That's a tough bracket, man.
It's a tough bracket. You know, you got UCLA as the 2, even though their best defender is out for the season. You got Gonzaga as the 3. You got UConn as the 4. Everybody apparently loves TCU, so you know they're the 6th seed. You know, from that mighty Big 12 that we talked about. So I went through there, and this was my shocker pick to myself. I shocked myself. I picked Gonzaga to win that region.
I was looking at Gonzaga. I was like, he's gonna say Gonzaga because we don't talk about this before. Because like, he'll pick Gonzaga.
Well, this is the first tournament that I remember that Gonzaga wasn't a big story going into the tournament. So usually Gonzaga comes into the tournament with somewhat of a bullseye. They're always a contender. People are saying how weak their conference is, and they're just waiting for Gonzaga to fall. But this year, Gonzaga's just kind of easing into the tournament. Nobody's talking about them, so I don't see the pressure.
Top 12. I like the breakdown. I remember just if you don't know anything about college basketball, we've done brackets. I think probably the first bracket that I done and I talked about a lot. I was a senior in high school. My math teacher was me and him would talk about it. You know, it was block scheduling, so I saw him every other day. So like the games were happening. And I think that year Utah State had a guy named Arsenal. He had like a real short neck, long arms. And I kept picking Gonzaga. And he asked me, he's like, why you keep picking these guys every week? I'm like, I watched this is before, like right now everyone's watching TV and internet and Twitter and everything else. But back in the day, you weren't getting these other schools. You were getting Duke, you were getting ACC basketball, you were getting Big East basketball, you were getting Kentucky, SEC. Like you weren't getting a lot of games on ESPN. You were getting games every week, but it wasn't you were rarely getting a game. Davidson wasn't on TV in November, December, just as a Wednesday night game. You were getting your standard North Carolina, UVA, Virginia Tech, ACC. So when I watched the tournaments were the first time that everyone got to see these guys. Because before the internet, you wouldn't know what you were getting from a team from South Dakota State or North Dakota State or Northern Iowa. So if you watch the tournaments, because ESPN they took that block out, because basically they would play the tournaments all day long. They wouldn't play show. They would just play these tournament games all day long. I think ESPN2 just started. So you weren't getting a lot of information early in the season. That's why you had teams like Wally Zerbiak and Miami of Ohio breaking off upsets because no one had seen them before, including the players that they're playing against. So if you go to UNC, you go to Kentucky, you go to Duke, you go to Temple, you go to St. John's, UConn, you're not worried about some small school from North Carolina. Then meanwhile, a guy like Steph Curry explodes. You're like, yo, who is this dude shooting from 29 feet? And we're 19 and 21-year-olds. Like, he shouldn't be able to shoot from out there. Wally Zerbiak killed the tournament. You might not know his name now. He played for the Timberwolves. I think he played for the Cavaliers. He was an NBA journeyman. But he murdered the tournament for like 3 rounds. Steph Curry made his name. Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, those dudes came to Steph Curry's college basketball games because one year he just exploded on the map. They're like, how does this happen? Now they kind of set it up to where, because a lot of those schools were knocking teams out. So if I look up a matchup like let's go with UConn Iona, right? Back in the day, 96, 97, 98, 99, those schools were knocking out a school like UConn. And ESPN is to bank on having teams like UConn in the Final Four, the Elite Eight. Well, so what happened was like, you know what? Let's start playing these teams during the season, or let's put them on TV so people knew who they were, so they wouldn't just shock us and ruin all these brackets all over the place. So now you don't see the upsets. I think having teams, your top 1, 2, or 3 teams make it to the Final Four, that's also rare. Someone's going to slip up. I think
Alabama. 2008.
I think Alabama has a lot of diversity. So, I mean, I think they could fall to a team like, they could fall to Maryland in the second round. Just not being prepared, just kind of being off. Because they're going to win the 16-1 matchup no matter who it is. Then you also have teams like Duke out of the East. They have a pedigree for just being a big time school. I think guys play differently with the name on the front versus name on the back. I think that's always something you can bank on. I always bet a 12 beating a 5 every year, no matter what. I don't care who the 5 is. I pick a 12 to beat a 5. So you got a team like Drake beating Miami that could knock your bracket out, because what happens is that 12 beats that 5, and then that shooter gets confidence. The coach gets confidence in his rotation, because if you think about the basketball talent, yes, I'm pretty sure Houston's basketball talent is higher than a team like Boise State. But if you get a guy that's feeling it, i.e., we'll think about the NBA. A lot of these guys have the talent to score 70. It doesn't happen often. You got guys that score 50. It doesn't happen often. But the night that a guy is hot, Klay Thompson, 8, 9, 10 threes. If you catch a guy and he puts 6 threes on you on a Thursday night in a 12-5 game, and then you get to 12 versus the 6th game the following, was it 12-4 game next week? So you got a high guy from Drake. They're playing against Indiana. He was like, yo, I was hot in this building 2 days ago. Everybody's talking about him on ESPN because he's the 12th, and he gets hot again. It's a lot of teams, a lot of double-digit seeds that make it past the second round. So I think this is probably why it's always tough to pick. You want to go chalk and be like, all right, one of the top 3 seeds is going to make it over to the Final Four, but you never know. I mean, that George Mason run was an anomaly because VCU did. So like it does happen where a lot of these teams just make these runs. I'm just super excited about it because I won my bracket last year. I wasn't even watching any college basketball, but I won like the top one out of my thing because I went with like, you know what? I think VCU, because I always pick a team from Virginia, I pick a team from Utah every year. You know what? Utah State, they might beat Missouri. You might not think that, or yeah.
I picked it.
You picked it, so like, but you lived out there. You got the Utah Utes had different college, but you just think about, you know what? I think this team is surprise one. I think Providence over Kentucky. I think Providence could beat Kentucky. You're a Kentucky guy. I know you probably picked them, but you get Providence. They beat Kentucky. They get like a jolt, and now you got Kansas State coming in the next round. And that guy gets hot, and you go up 11-12 in the first half. Now you feel
so
and that's what it's all about. Sometimes it's just about runs.
Yeah, so I had a couple of key points that I wanted to hit on. So, we talked about West Virginia against Maryland. So I went on my thing about West Virginia being 7-11 in the Big 12. Why would I pick them to win? You know why I would pick them to win? Because Maryland was 16-1 at home and 2-9 on the road. So, Maryland does not play well away from home. So, like when you have limited information and regardless of what people say, they are not watching every single basketball game.
Not even.
But just thinking about it on that level. I also picked Furman to upset UVA. So there's your response to your Kentucky Providence pick right there. So, so
upset with that.
but just some other notes. Baylor is a team that I'm concerned about. They're the 3 seed in Alabama's region, but they're 2-4 in their last 6 games coming into the tournament. Purdue, who I just talked about, they won the Big Ten tournament. You got to give them that. But prior to that, they were 4-4 in their last 8 before that. So, another upset that I picked was, you mentioned it already, I picked world-class rapper Drake over Miami because, Miami has an injury to worry about, Orchan Omir. So, we don't know if he's going to play or not. He's got a bum ankle. I also picked in that same bracket, in that same area, I picked Kent State over Indiana. So I got Kent State and Drake meeting up in the second round. So, one of those two teams, by my view.
In the second round, one has to move on. So now if you got 12 versus 13 in the second round, that means you got a 12 in the that's the Sweet 16, right?
Yeah, I got Kent State beating Drake, so I got a 13 in the Sweet 16.
And they're matched up with, looks like, Houston, I'm imagining.
Yeah, I would have them matched up. Yeah, I would have them matched up with Houston. Yep. So then in that same bracket,
they won 2 games. I mean, Houston 31 wins. They probably expect to be in the Sweet 16. You get a team that's 12 or 13, they aren't expected to be in the Sweet 16, so they're playing
well, that's why I led with I would like to be in the room when the committee puts these seeds together. Not necessarily what teams they let in, but the seeds that they give these teams. I would like to see that conversation. So Xavier is a team that I just don't know what to think. They're a trendy Final Four pick. They got Sean Miller back from Arizona. So, they have the coach in place. But they got some injuries going on. I saw this team lose to Butler and DePaul this season. So I just can't pick a team that lost to Butler and DePaul to the Final Four. I just can't. Iowa State, has a little bit of flavor because last year they came in unexpected. TJ Otzelberger, the coach, came in. They made it to the Sweet 16 last year, but the only problem is the leader of that is at Texas now. Speaking of Texas,
at 19 and 13, I think that's putting them in a position where, I don't know. It seems like they're, because you got Penn State at 22 and 13, rated 10th.
Yeah, and like I said, the Big 12 was the toughest conference in the country, but you also got to move teams around so you can avoid conference matchups. They try to avoid conference matchup or rematches up until at least the Sweet 16. So you kind of have to finagle around a little bit so that way you're not getting a conference matchup in round 2. Like I said, Memphis is dangerous for Purdue, but back to the bracket of death, Arkansas could be dangerous for Kansas because Nick Smith is back. He's probably going to be a top 5 NBA draft pick. So just keep your eye on that if they could get past Illinois. St. Mary's. I am so sorry. St. Mary's. I picked VCU. The reason that I picked VCU is because you're playing in Albany and St. Mary's has to travel across the country from California. But not only that, they played an early game. So I'm just not feeling St. Mary's in that spot. St. Mary's is the better team. Obviously, they're the 5. But with the travel and all that, the early window, I'm just going with VCU right there. So I was tempted to pick Northwestern over UCLA in the second round, but I'm not there. But one thing that I don't like, before I turn it back over to you, Raf, one thing that I don't like is I don't like 9-seeded Auburn playing in Birmingham. Why are they getting an advantage?
It's always something. It's just because logistically you can't. is always something. There's always a team that's gonna have some kind of geographical advantage. I remember North Carolina and Duke seem to always play somewhere near North Carolina, either just north or in North Carolina in of itself. There is a method to the madness to where you do want your better teams in it. But I think I'm going to push it back to you. Is this of the college playoff formats, where do you rank the NCAA tournament as far as its ability to find a champion for their sport?
So what I like about the NCAA tournament is the best team doesn't always win. You know, like in the NBA, generally the best team is going to win because you have 7 games to get it right, potentially. So in a one and done format, the intensity levels are up, the excitement is up. And the thing about it is this first weekend is going to be awesome. But if Kent State really gets through to the Sweet 16, like I said, people are going to hate them playing Houston, especially if they win. Because we want Cinderella in the first round. You want something to talk about. You don't want Cinderella in the Final Four. The
Final Four.
Well, I want it, but the media execs don't want it.
He would have course shot against Duke to go in. Sports Science did a measurement that said if it hit 2 inches lower, it would have gone in. I wanted to go in because I think that the NCAA has a better format than college football.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they should have leaned in more to getting, like, okay, like right now, Gonzaga and St. Mary's, those slash schools are getting in. I would have leaned in more to getting Gonzaga and, St. Mary's and Murray State and Wichita State and a lot of these other smaller schools. I would want them in the tournament more versus I'd rather have a 25-6 St. Mary's team in versus a 19-14 Purdue team, hypothetically. Because I know Purdue carries a name and the weight, but I'm like, if I get this other team in, the money's going to be there because everybody and their grandma, like literally, I can print out 20 brackets tomorrow, take them to the people in my office who know nothing about basketball. The 22-year-old airman who knows nothing about college basketball and just say, hey, these are the colors of the teams. And she can make her bracket off of the fact that I like burgundy more than I like green and move that team over. And then invest her in the game by saying, yo, remember you picked that burgundy team over the green? They're up 2 with 4 minutes left. And she can come over and sit and watch one of the 2 6-year TVs I have on my desk. And we're locked in. So the ratings will lock people in. I think.
Yeah. Well, last year we just saw St. Peter's. They knocked off my Wildcats. They got to the Sweet 16 against Purdue. Down to the Elite 8.
Jersey.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I love that. So college basketball, truly, unless you're a 16 seed, you have a chance to win the national title no matter who you are, no matter what conference you come from, no matter what city you're located in, you have the chance to win the national title. It's just one game, and all it takes is for somebody to get hot, just like baseball.
3, like
baseball.
Can you get open? Can you get open?
Yeah.
Knock down. Can your team go 17 for 24 from 3 in the first half? I mean, it's crazy, but if you can do that, like, because Baylor, everyone talks about Baylor and how intensely they play defense and how they're always in your face. I watched the Kansas-Baylor game. Baylor had Kansas on the rope in the first half. This was back when I was back in Utah. But the second half, when the Kansas shots started falling, or the guy on the wing made the perfectly timed pass to the guy cutting to the hole, and he got the layup in the and one, it's like, yeah, your defense can be intense. But if guys are knocking down shots, it's not a matter of your defense being good or bad, but like if a guy's seeing the ball go through the hoop and a team is seeing the ball go through the hoop, and now you pressing, now you fouling, now you got free throws going through the hoop. Now on your end, and it's home, or you get a home crowd, you get home cooking, you get home refs, whatever the case may be. I think college basketball has the greatest atmosphere to performance ratio in any other sport, because
Right.
I'm pretty sure Florida State used to go into Miami and beat Miami in the Orange Bowl, no matter how big the home crowd was, because you're beating your guy one-on-one. College basketball home court advantage, i.e., you said Maryland 2-9 in a row, 16-1 at home. How was that? How was that the same team? We could talk about with the NBA with
Right.
Golden State. Their record on the road versus home is inversed. So it's like that home basketball, shoot the ball. Like if I'm screaming shoot it and then you're in an opponent's gym, you're thinking they're saying shoot it because you've been bricking. But if Jordan Poole is home in Golden State and somebody screams from the third row, shoot it, he's feeling it, goes in. He looks at that dude in the crowd. They do a little hand signal. Everybody's feeling it. The bench is hyped. When Steph was shooting threes, everyone turns around, put their 3 fingers up. So in college basketball, they have such an advantage there that I think you can overcome the fact that you're a 13 seed and beat a 4 simply because your guy's hot and their guy isn't.
Yeah, and what I was going to say was baseball also has a great postseason just from the standpoint of a hot pitcher, so the best team doesn't always win. Like whatever pitcher is hot at the time is generally going to get further into the playoffs. But a couple of quick other things I wanted to bring up before we switch topics here. So you brought up Providence and Kentucky. So the reason why that game is great for me, besides being a Kentucky fan, is Mr. Bryce Hopkins, who left Kentucky last year because he wasn't getting any playing time, and he's probably going to be first team all Big East this season. So revenge matchup there. And then the committee, they got, so I'm not going to complain about the bracket. I'm not going to do the why'd you do this, why'd you do that. But the one thing I will bring up is that you did a disservice to both Duke and Oral Roberts in that 5-12 matchup, because Duke is the ACC champ, playing against a team that has only lost once since Thanksgiving. Oral Roberts has the nation's longest winning streak as a 12 seed. And the last loss was at New Mexico in a game that they scheduled the same week that they played it. So, so both of those teams, I think, are quality teams that are Sweet 16-ish teams, but somebody's not going to get there because they got matched up against each other.
Yeah, somebody's got like a lot of teams have aspirations, but yeah.
So March.
The seeding, I like the human element of the seeding. I'm glad they don't use strict analytics or strict math. I like the fact that, you know what, a team might be misseeded. It's not like I don't want perfect. I don't want you to use all the numbers available and all the computer programs and all these other things. I don't need it perfect. I think people are inundated with this ideology of just perfect. I don't want it perfect. I want it consistent. So if you consistently every once in a while put a team at 12 that should be 7, then fine. That 12 will beat the 5. My bracket will live on. Because if you think about it, you're only a fan of one team. There's 68 teams in this tournament. The likelihood of your team's going to win it. We talked about Jim Boeheim. We talked about Jim Calhoun. We talked about Krzyzewski. These are some of Dean Smith, Roy Williams, Bill Self. We talked about these guys. I think all those names I ran off, legends. Probably we're looking at like 200 plus years of coaching between the collective group. They probably got like
Boeheim and Coach K are about 88 by themselves.
Yeah, they probably got about 12 to 14 championships between them in all those years of coaching. So basketball doesn't weigh heavily so much on the end result championship. I just think that their tournament format is just people are so engaged in Final Four that we forgot how much we love this Final Four. Like it was literally the marquee sports moment of the year. It was, in my opinion, I think growing up, I think it might have been better than the Super Bowl, because Super Bowl was like, yeah, it was one and done, but you could tell throughout the year who's likely going to be a Super Bowl champion. You remember those years when it was like Greatest Show on Turf or the Titans, or when Atlanta got hot, they just wouldn't, stop winning. Maybe you would have thought the Vikings would have beat them that NFC Championship game and it didn't go the same way. But you can look throughout the course of the year. You can't look at college basketball and tell me in December, what team's definitively going to win the national championship. You can't tell me in January. Hell, you can't tell me February 27th what team is definitely going to win You got to put all your pay you get for the month of March for whatever your income is. You're banking on this one team. I don't know how many people are full on confident. I think that's the beauty part of it. And I think that's the part I like about the brackets being picked by humans. If you go math, man, you can have, like, you go 1 through 68. It'll be chalk. It won't have your Oral Roberts versus Duke. Because now you're like, this team hasn't lost since Thanksgiving. Duke's good. Duke's a, but they got a young coach. Mm-hmm. And so you give me intrigue. You took Thursday and Friday off work. You're not taking that off work
every year.
You're not taking
every year
if it's like this same team's going to win it off. You're not taking a day off to watch Alabama versus.
Well, this is the one sport.
The game, because you just know, like, that's fine.
This is the one sport. This is the one sport that I don't get mad if I'm wrong. Like if I get mad about the college football playoff, if I say Ohio State's going to beat Georgia and then they don't do it, I'm mad. Or if I bet some money saying that, the Lakers are going to beat the Grizzlies in Game 7 and I get it wrong, then I'm upset because I lost some money. But in college basketball, I want the chaos. I don't necessarily want to be wrong, but when I'm wrong, that either means some kind of history is happening, i.e., sorry, Raf, UMBC over Virginia, some kind of history is happening.
Always bring it up.
Or you get your George Masons, your VCUs, Butler made the national title back-to-back. You get that type of stuff when you're wrong, because I didn't have any of that.
Shout out to Indiana.
And not only that, but VCU came from the first four. So they weren't even comfortably in the field. They came from the first four and made a Final Four run.
Cinderella run had Virginia in a blaze. VCU came right back and did it again. The Butler back-to-back years in the championship game. People forget that Florida won it back-to-back. Billy Donovan, Joakim Noah, Al Horford.
That's the last team to win it back-to-back.
But the thing about it, that shouldn't even happen. The odds of this tournament for a team to win it back-to-back years is like they won it back-to-back. So Butler being in it back-to-back years, not only being in it, they, like I said, a couple inches away from winning it one year against Duke with Gordon Hayward. Right. And then the following year being a competitive game. But it's something about when they play those games at basketball stadiums, I've heard, like, the backdrop throws players off because the courts are essentially on the 50-yard line of a football field.
Right. Yeah. The visual peripherals are off.
Perception, and it's kind of off. But if you're a shooter, you can make it work. But and remember when Butler did that, they were in the Horizon League. They weren't even in the Big East yet. So that made it even more impressive. But with that being said, let's look at these NBA teams. So bottom six. So looking at the standings, I ended up with Detroit, Houston, San Antonio, Charlotte, Orlando, and Indiana. So those were the bottom six at the time that I pulled these numbers. So let me pull it. So I got the mock draft pre-NCAA tournament edition. So I got Detroit with the first overall pick. I got Houston at 2, San Antonio 3, Charlotte 4, Orlando 5, Washington Wizards 6.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you had?
Yeah. Well, no, I had Indiana, but that was from last week, so the standings have changed. Yeah, so we can go to the Wizards, though. We can go to the Wizards.
Indiana, because I think they're both like 31 and 38 or 31 and 37.
Yeah, so they're all in the play-in. Like Washington, Indiana, Chicago, and Toronto are all like fighting for the play-in within like a game and a half of each other. So I can take Indiana out.
10 teams in your bottom. It's like basically about 10 teams in your bottom 6.
Yeah. So out of the teams that you just named, which one would you say has the brightest future?
Brightest future. Any of the other 22 to 24 teams. Short of Portland. I think like Portland, because I got Portland 7, like I said, the 31 and 38, 31-37 record. Portland in the West, and even, Indiana in the East, like it can change. You win 3 or 4 games in a row, which is possible when you have when you have scorers, you have big men, you have, you play defense or whatever, you can run off a few wins in a row, especially if you're playing, like, say the Pacers. I don't know what their schedule is right now, but say they got a game against Orlando, they got a game against the Wizards, and they got a game against this in one calendar week. Okay, you can go from 31 wins to 34 rather easily because those teams are top 5 ready to lose. The problem is the NBA. There's not. It seems as if there is a benefit to losing and getting the top pick. The problem is this: it's not sustainable. So if you look at a team like the Hornets are one of those teams that are in that mix. So you got them at 4. So they drafted LaMelo Ball. You signed free agents. You had Boy Bridges, but whatever worked out there. And then you have Terry Rozier. You got Jordan running the thing. So what happens is they were hot last year. They were they're on the come up. So then what happens when their come up falls off? They get desperate. So guys who show up there as free agents thinking, okay, they got a LaMelo Ball, Rozier, they got the number 4 pick. They show up and it's like none of this is working. So now they want to blow the whole thing up. So a lot of those teams at the bottom just blow the whole thing up every single year.
You want to hear something funny real quick?
I'm listening.
All right. So the reason that the Hornets don't have the brightest future is because some people say Michael Jordan is the GOAT, but when it comes to this owner and drafting stuff, he's the WOAT. So just real quick, I'm going to say these 2 things and then I'm going to give it right back to you. But so Giannis Antetokounmpo went 15th in the draft. Now, of course, this is looking back. You know what I mean? Like, nobody knew at the time Giannis was going to turn it. But this is just looking backwards.
Perspective.
They took Cody Zeller at number 4 in that draft. Yeah, and I got one more. In 2017, they took my guy Malik Monk from Kentucky at number 11, right? So Donovan Mitchell went 13. Bam Adebayo went 14th. And John Collins went 19th. And then, of course, 2018, the last one, then I'll give it back to you. You brought up Miles Bridges. How did they get Miles Bridges, you ask? Because they traded Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for him. So the answer to this question is not the Hornets.
Oh, absolutely not the Hornets. Like I said, we talked about this before. If I'm an owner and I got 5 guys on the bench that aren't seeing the floor, how is that the case? How are you good enough to make it to the NBA, but I have a coaching staff that can't find a spot for you on the floor? Like, how are you so inept as a basketball player that I have you on the team, you're getting your league minimum 750,000, whatever that number is, but I can't find you on the floor? That's the problem. So you have a team like, for instance, we'll go back with the Hornets. The Hornets have 3 first-round picks. First one being 4th. Like you said, there's a consensus top 3 players. So they're 4th. So they got this guy, Amen Thompson. He has a brother, Isaiah Thompson, potentially going to Orlando. Orlando has, what we got? Orlando has 2
first. Paolo, the rookie of the year.
They got the rookie of the year. They got 2 first-round picks. The problem is when you are that bad, you often have changeovers in multiple key places in the front office that run concurrently with your draft selection. So 2022 draft, they get Pablo. If they fall into the number 1 or number 2 slot this year, then it's potential that you get rid of the GM. So now you get a new GM in, and he drafts a guy. So the expectation ramps back up. It's like, oh, we got another top 3 pick. Like I said, they got 2 in the first round. Team like a Hornets got 3. So now you set another expectation that we're going to get 2 or 3 young guys, and then you get them in, and when it doesn't work, you get a guy who maybe came there as a free agent, maybe guy that's been there for a while. he leaves. So Charlotte, you got a guy like Terry Rozier. He came from Boston, like, I'm gonna see what I can get popping down here in Charlotte. And it's like, none of this is working. You're in a 30-team league where 20 teams make the playoffs, and you're not making that opportunity. It's like, why am I playing in the bottom third of this league? Get me out of here. So you get sent to another team. It just seems like there's this idea that the NBA has, cultivated this. Oh, you're doing terrible. You get the top overall pick. NFL is big on that. You worst record in the league, you get the number one pick. But in NFL, it's not as much turnover, and it's not as many opportunities for you to go different places. 5-man NBA team, you're like, you know what, Terry Rozier, like, I'll go to LA and be 7th off the bench just to play with LeBron or play with AD. Whereas the NFL is like, listen, if you're offensive tackle, you're not going to another team that already has 2 starting tackles. You're just staying in Jacksonville. You're just staying with the Giants. You're staying with the Jets. And then they get the number 1 pick, number 2 pick, number 3 pick. They make a move, and then your team starts to build. So in a couple of years, you can go from worst to first. Every year it happens. We talk about this with the playoff format. In the NBA, the idea is there, but when it comes down to it, draft night, there's always a bunch of bad trades. The Luka for Trae Young trade. There's always Kobe got traded, for Vlade Divac. There's always like these trades where people just kind of overthink it to the point where you get a guy like Mikal Bridges that goes from Phoenix to Brooklyn, you give him the ball. Now he's dropping 30-point games every other game. It's like the talent is there. Kawhi in San Antonio, when he went to Toronto, people didn't think that Kawhi could lead a team. Granted, some injuries and things happened on the way, but he did hit the shot against Philly. He did, they still, granted, they didn't call the travel, so it didn't happen. But he did lead their team, the mid-range jump shot. So it was like, okay. But in San Antonio, he was a 16 point a game guy. So it can happen. It's just in the NBA, there's almost no patience. Dwayne Casey won Coach of the Year in Toronto, and they fired him. So that's the problem. The NBA has no patience. So their format of tanking to get a guy, for instance, San Antonio is tanking to get Wembayama. Well, as of right now, mathematically, they're third. And they're going to end up, potentially could draft Brandon Miller. But you're tanking to get the best 1 or 2 players in the draft and still might end up third because Houston's so dysfunctional to the point where there's rumors they want to bring James Harden back. Like, we don't remember 2 years ago when he did a press conference saying these guys can't win. So it just, the NBA, more than NFL GMs, they just grasp at straws. And I think most of these teams are in the bottom 6. We can, without even really thinking about it, the Spurs have been awful for a few years. Correct? The Pistons have been awful for a few years. They just drafted Cade Cunningham a couple years ago. The Rockets have been terrible for the last few years. They just drafted Jalen Green, and the boy used to play with LeBron, something like Josh Smith or something like that. The Hornets, we know Michael Jordan just historically hasn't been a good GM to the point where he hasn't been able to put a good team together. Like, he hasn't been able to put a playoff caliber team together ever in Charlotte. So that means they're going to be bad. So you got the Pacers. The Pacers have good talent, but they traded Sabonis. They just make the wrong trades. Like the Kings, we thought the Kings would be the same with both, but they lucked out. But certain teams are just so poorly run. Portland, they traded Josh Hart during warmups. It's just like some of these teams just make such bad moves, and I think they're inundated with the resumes of these guys who come in to be GMs and vice president player personnel, or you play golf with the right guy, and that person might not know what they're doing, but their MBA from Yale or their advanced degree from Stanford blinds you. Because some of these moves are so bad, and I think that's why these teams are in these predicaments.
So I was looking at Indiana. They do have the talent. Coming out of college, I absolutely loved Tyrese Halliburton. And, at the time that he was traded for Sabonis, I honestly thought the Kings should have traded De'Aaron Fox. You could go either way because right now De'Aaron Fox leading the league in clutch baskets. So, I can't say the Kings made the wrong decision. But they also have Buddy Hield, who is the league leader and made three-pointers this season. They picked up Ben Mathurin from Arizona, so he's their rookie that's doing well. The first 3 or 4 games of the season, he scored more points coming off the bench than any rookie had ever scored in history. Miles Turner, they got to figure out what they're doing there because he's their version of John Collins, who ends up in trade talks every year but never goes anywhere. But Indiana also has a championship-winning coach. They got Rick Carlisle. So depending on what kind of timetable they're on, that could be good for them.
Calm down. He's got one. He's no Eric Spoelstra. The move. Spo went to the finals.
Hey, all I know is they played in a final. They coached in a finals against each other, and Carlisle came out on top. But so I was looking at Detroit,
and then he took Jimmy Butler to win. But it's cool. Carry on.
You brought up Detroit, so I think Detroit has a core now. They have not only do they have Cade Cunningham, but they have Jaden Ivey. He's their rookie this year that's coming on late because Cunningham only played a few games this season before having a shin injury, so he's been out ever since. So he's just resting up, getting ready for next season. But they also just picked up James Wiseman, who has been putting up some decent numbers since they got him. They got Jalen Duren.
8 basketball games is me.
They have Boban Bogdanovic
together. They have all these pieces put together, but none of it is sustainable. So people lose their jobs. Because if I'm a GM of Detroit and I get fired and you come in, you're not going to look at the roster I put together and say, this has promise. You're like, I got a bunch of injuries.
Well, the thing is that they're all young. I mean, even how old is Wiseman? Wiseman's not older than 23,
couple of days older than my son. My son ain't 20.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So they still got a core, but what I fear, because their coach just happens to be the aforementioned Dwayne Casey. So what I'm afraid of is that they're going to move on from him, at some point, because you got to have results. You can have all the talent you want. You got to have results.
You got to have.
But I like what they're doing. Yeah, I like what they're doing. We'll see who they end up with. If they could get Brandon Miller, that would be a good look. So, because I was looking at this, the mock drafts, like you mentioned, and, Wembanyama, depending on who you talk to, he's getting comparisons to KD. He's getting comparisons to this is what Porzingis is supposed to be or was supposed to be. I look at Brandon Miller. People are calling him Paul George. I probably see a little bit more Danny Granger, but neither here nor there, same concept.
But
and then
cut his career short.
And then Scoot Henderson, these comparisons piss me off because I got what the comparison said was he's a comparison of Derrick Rose and prime Russell Westbrook. It's basically the same dude. You know what I mean? So those are your top 3.
What do you do with? See, that's the thing. But if you're Houston, the problem is you're going to keep drafting these wing players. And then you're going to have young wing players who are essentially by default in competition. Because if it doesn't gel, then it just becomes competition. So it's a matter of, do we have the veteran leadership necessary to guide them, which I don't think they have. I think they gave Silas a job, his opportunity. I don't know how long that lasts.
He gone.
It's just these ebbs and flows of the NBA, and I think there's this expectation that because in the NBA you bring in the right 1 or 2 pieces, it could change your whole fortune. Like for instance, if you have a couple of guys that are out for too long, you got a couple of guys, Chris Middleton in Milwaukee. People talked about how many games he's missed and how much he's missed by not being there. So in the NBA, I think this narrative and this expectation that if we bring in the right guy and you bring in a guy with the right comparisons, i.e. prime Derrick Rose, prime MVP Russell Westbrook, essentially the same dude, you bring that guy in and then you pair him with Jalen Green, Kevin Porter Jr. It's like, oh, we got something here. Well, does it make sense? can these two guys play without the ball while this guy is your prime Derrick Rose distributor? Does your coach have a system that fit him? And I don't think teams in the NBA that hover around the bottom, these teams that don't make the play in, I don't think they have that part figured out yet. And that's why every single year you have the same teams drafting in the top 6 or 7.
Hey, Scoot got this Westbrook Rose thing down. He's only shooting 27.5% from 3. But so also in Houston,
and you're gonna take him number 2 overall.
Yeah. So also in Houston, they have Jabari Smith from Auburn, who's been playing well. So they have some pieces. I'm probably getting rid of Kenyon Martin Jr. In this scenario, to get somebody else in there. But they're not the answer to the question because their owner has short arms and deep pockets. Fertitta, that dude is not spending any money.
All right, yeah,
he's not spending any money. Harden I don't think Harden's going back there, and if Harden does go back there, all it's doing is blowing up whatever they're working on anyway. So for the purposes,
went back to the Air Force.
And then I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my Wizards, who probably have a worse GM than the Hornets. So we got Kuzma now. Got Porzingis in there, so we're gonna have to pay Kuzma, I guess. We got Black Brad, aka Bradley Beal, who Nick Smith is compared to. But when I look at this, you just gotta strip it down. Like everything the Spurs are doing is what the Wizards should be doing to build some kind of future, because you're not going to win with Bradley Beal as your number 1. And that's no disrespect to him. It just is what it is, But so for the purposes of this conversation, I like Orlando because, as we mentioned, Paolo Banchero is probably going to be the rookie of the year. He's basically the runaway. They also have Franz Wagner. They've seemed to rejuvenate Bobo. He's been playing well this season. Wendell Carter.
More run in general. Like, I don't know why his opportunities were so limited in Denver.
Well, I mean, he had to have been sleeping with the coach's wife or something. That's the only thing I can come up with.
It doesn't make any sense when you have because everyone keeps comparing Wembanyama, like they're saying, "Oh, we've never seen anything like it before," and like Bo is like, "I've been in the league for years. I do anything that he does. Like, how come I'm not getting?" Just doesn't make any sense. If I'm a coach, I'm looking now so I got a 7'2" dude that can handle the ball and shoot the jump, shoot the J. Like, put him in the game.
They also have the double machine known as Wendell Carter, who's still young, from Chicago Bull fame. Then guard wise, they have Jalen Suggs, Cole Anthony, and look and behold, Markelle Fultz is back. He's better than Ben Simmons.
That's the thing. These teams they acquired, they have these young talented guys, but it's not really a formula to make it work. And you need a perfect formula for a lot of that stuff to work. You have to have the right intellectual pieces in place for the physical pieces to succeed. And I think what happens with teams is like they don't marry the two. And when you do, you get Milwaukee, you get Nick Nurse in Tennessee, you get Thibodeau with any team he coaches in the regular season. You get the intellectual piece with the physical piece, and it marries. Mm-hmm. What happens is you get inundated with the fact that you have the number 1 pick in Detroit, and you're going to get this guy Victor, and he's going to come in, and you're not going to know how to get him, Ivy, and Cunningham, and Wiseman, and Maxwell on the floor together to where they can perform and get you 112 points. You need 112, 116 points. So if you don't have that, you can have all this talent in the world. If you look at the Charlotte teams, they've had talent, but it's like, how do you make it work? And that's the thing. So when it doesn't work, they end up in these same spots. How often is Detroit drafted in the top 5 or 6 in the last few years? 20 teams make the playoffs the last few years. 20 teams.
Yeah.
And they're not in the running and out of it
and granted,
December.
And granted, Orlando's probably not going to make the play-in but they're only about 3 games out of the play-in. So, so they're right there, but the answer is not the Spurs because Popovich is on his way out. And looking at that roster, I'm just, they got Keldon Johnson from Kentucky. They got one of the Jones brothers, Tyus and Trey. I think they got Trey, but then they got Jeremy's
Rodman.
They got Jeremy Sohan, who to me is the hybrid of, I mean, it's redundant, but he's a hybrid of Rodman and Draymond, the same way that Scoot is Derrick Rose and, the same guy, but
ability with a lot of energy that
so looking at this,
you run the ball through Draymond, so that's his impact. Screen.
Right. So looking at this, so looking at this, I like Houston's talent. Like you mentioned, it's not going to go anywhere, and Fertitta's not going to do the right thing. So just for the purposes of this, I think I like Orlando out of those bottom 6. And the Wizards are still going to be, we're going to be having this conversation 10 years from now, saying the same exact thing that we just said 5 minutes ago, insert somebody else instead of Bradley Beal.
They gave him $200 million, right?
Oh, yeah, they did. And he's going to ask out by All-Star break next year. But I would be proactive and get rid of him at the end of the offseason. I mean, at this offseason coming up. So, because I mean, at this point, what are you going to do? You're probably going to pay Kuzma. You got Porzingis, and right now you're barely on the edge of the play-in with those 3. So I can't imagine that they're just going to get better suddenly and not, you know what I mean?
Had the Bulls, and I think the Bulls kind of got mixed into this too because they're 31-36.
Yeah, I think the Bulls need a new coach.
I think this is a difficult year to gauge the NBA because it feels like everybody's equally as good and equally as mediocre.
Yeah.
There's a few standouts here and there, but then you have a team like Denver that's the standout. But then the last 3 games have been highlighted that, Jokic is.
Oh, and by the way, because I know you were wondering, yes, Denver just lost again. They just lost to the Toronto Raptors. So, what's up, Jokic? But, but I can tell you 2 things that are not mediocre. Tank Davis and Ryan Garcia are not mediocre. So, Raf, we got a big fight coming up on April 22.
Big fight. Combined.
This is a catch weight fight, so there's no title. Catch weight fight, so no title on the line. What we looking at?
I looked at that whole catch weight part, and it's kind of bothersome because Garcia essentially can't be more than like 146 pounds like the day before the fight, but like he could be whatever he wants to walk into the ring. I think Davis is kind of setting up the way Mayweather used to use his leverage in fights. I think is something that he's taught his proteges. It's just that it's the equivalent of Michael Jordan teaching other guys who play 2 guard how to get the 2 dribble pull up off. When you're Jordan or you're Kobe, yeah, it looks like you're creating 2 or 3 feet of extra space off that dribble just by pulling that move. But it's nuance to it. And I think a lot of guys follow Mayweather. I remember Adrian Broner was one of those guys that he tried to over insert his personality into stuff, brush his hair all the time, arguing with the post ring. But when he got into the ring, Mayweather didn't stand there and let you just throw a bunch of punches at him and dodge the ball. He counterpunched. And then he let people, you might have wanted him to knock people out, but he's like, listen, I'm going to walk around this ring for 36 minutes. I'm going to leave this ring without a swelling. I'm not going to use the ice. I'm not going to use anything on my face because I'm so good defensively. I can do this. So I think a lot of guys who are mentored by Mayweather try to take that aspect where they kind of try to take the fight into their own hands, the pre-fight, the schedule, the contract, the money, the location, the date, and all this other stuff. And I don't think guys have that kind of cachet. Garcia, handsome dude. He's been a big buzz on social media for 3 or 4 years. Davis, tough guy, big knockouts, late in fights. So I think it's gonna be good. If I had to pick right now, I watched, like we were talking about this the other day. I watched the conversation. I believe it was between Devin Haney, Gervonta Davis, and like a third person, and they were talking about the way Garcia fights and how he like rocks his head back to avoid punches. And each one of them, when they saw that, they said, "Oh, that's where I would catch him. I'd catch him right there." So then in one of Garcia's fights, he got caught by a guy. I'm not sure who it was, but he got caught by a guy knocking him down. He was doing that same move because they say, "Oh, the way he sticks his chin up like that, so he sticks his chin up." So I think
he was fighting Luther Campbell in that fight.
Yeah, so he got caught, and I think Tank being a low to the ground fighter, he can time out his punches. Like his uppercut is what he's famous for. I just don't know. Can you get the uppercut off on a guy that you're 5.5 inches shorter than? Because they got Ryan Garcia 5'10", Davis at 5'5.5". You got 4.5 inches on him. You use your reach. You know, normally he's taller than most of the guys that he fights. His knockout rate is not as high. It's only 82%, whereas Davis is 92%. So it's going to be tough. If I had to pick, and just looking at it, I'm going to go with the southpaw with the higher knockout percentage. I'm going to go Davis. I don't know what round. I'm going to go Davis.
I'm going to go Tank TKO 10th round. So you mentioned the knockdown that Garcia suffered. It was against Luther Campbell. And I think what concerned me about it was that it was in the second round. You know, so like normally if I see something like that outside of Deontay Wilder, you know, it's normally like 5th, 6th round, you've been computing the data, and then all of a sudden you got the kill shot and you go for it. You know, where I think Garcia has a chance is the hand speed. You know, his hands are quick. I'll give him that. And he has the 4-inch reach. So, you know, he has that going for him. So Tank's going to have to work to get in there. And I know a little bit different because I'm not a professional, but I was sparring with my guy, Kerry Dozier, and all 6'7" of him. And, you know, we went ding, ding, ding. And it went just like this. 2 steps forward, eat leather. 2 more steps, eat leather. Punch him in the stomach 2-3 times, run backwards. You know, that was what I had to do. But, you know, so Tank ain't going to run from him. But the one thing that I love about Tank is because people focus on the knockouts, which, you know, it's a knockout. But he has really good IQ, you know, and he has his own speed himself. And don't forget the last fight that he fought, he made the dude quit, and the dude said he couldn't see him. Hector Garcia. So, you know, that was going into the 9th round. But where I think Garcia can have success, besides the hand speed, is if he goes back to the Romero fight, you know, against Tank Davis. So they were talking a lot of trash coming into the fight. And, you know, when I going into the fight, I said, "Oh, Romero, you're going to get your ass whooped while you do that." So as the fight was going on, these first 5 rounds, he was going toe-to-toe with Tank. You know, he was landing some shots. He was taking a little bit of stuff, but Tank wasn't getting off, so to speak. You know, he was going, but then round 6 came. And I was sitting there and I said, Romero might have a chance to win this fight. Until he went jackrabbit. He came out in round 6 for no reason, just throwing all kinds of slugs at Tank. And I'm like, dude, stick to the game plan. Stick to the game plan. You're here in round 6, where a lot of people didn't even have you getting to this point. Yeah. Stay the course. That's what Ryan Garcia has to do. He has to stay the course. He can't. If Tank gives.
You think that the pressure to, because we've seen boxing, you had, like, if we can run off the top of our head, like I'm gonna call myself a casual boxing fan, but I'm a sports fan, casual boxing fan. You had Joshua Ortiz, you had the Wilder fights with Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury fought 1 or 2 people, I think, in between the Wilder fights. You never got the Joshua Wilder fight. Granted, these are heavyweights. Mayweather is still out here doing exhibitions. You got Jake Paul that's pulling in 30 or 40 million to fight best basketball players and MMA fighters. and he just caught a loss. You think it's going to be pressure for a guy like Garcia, who's basically he's cut his teeth in his social media buzz. His boxing talent, like you just when he hits you with that left hand, it doesn't look like he puts a lot of like when Mike Tyson threw a left hand, his whole body contorted, like his legs disconnected and spun around, and you can tell he was putting everything he had into that left hook. Mm-hmm. Garcia just is so quick; he comes over the top a lot of times of the guy's right shoulder, and he gets a quick knockout. Dude just falling over the place, and he gets the highlight reel knockout. Do you think he's gonna feel pressured to get that same kind of knockout on Davis, and then he does what Romero does and gets too close and gets caught? Because if they go 12 rounds and it's just like a tactical fight, I don't know if people are going to want to see it again. You know, well, the money's in a rematch.
Right, right. Well, see, I think that could be something that comes back to bite Garcia, because to me, he's relatively inexperienced. I mean, he's only had 22 fights. You know, granted, he's undefeated, but only 22 fights. Tank has about 6 or 7 more than him. So from that standpoint, that's where I'm kind of like, we saw you get knocked down. What other fighters have you fought that have given you the type of adversity that you may run into with Tank? So that's where I'm a little concerned.
If any of them give you that adversity, because that's, like I said, that was another part of the conversation. Like you're not fighting anybody. But if you have the hand speed and the strength to knock out Davis, doesn't matter who you fought. Yeah, you knocked out everybody.
Yeah. All it takes is one.
23 opponents, but all it takes is Davis southpaw slipping and getting caught with a left hand, and it's like,
well, you know, that's my concern with Earl Spence and Bud Crawford. Whereas, like, I think Crawford is the better boxer, but Spence puts so much pressure on you that Bud is the type of dude that waits a few rounds to try to figure you out, and then he catches you, you know, but he's not fighting anybody. So that's where, like, Spence has been tested. Now, you could argue Bud hasn't been tested because he hasn't fought anybody, but you know, but Spence has been tested. So that's what Tank has been tested. So when those moments of adversity come, or those moments of doubt come, I feel Tank is better equipped to respond. You know, where Garcia, like you said, he might get frustrated, go the Romero route, or he might turn into a dancer. You know, where he's swinging like 2-3 punches. Maybe he just backs up and dances for, you know, a little bit of the round or whatever the case. So that way he can ensure that he doesn't get knocked out in a particular round. But, you know, once Tank gets his hands on him, I'm interested to see how he responds to that. Because what is his chin? You know, we saw him get knocked down. It was only one time, you know, so I don't want to make snap judgments off of a one-time incident. But if Tank gets his hands on him, he's going down. You know, so Garcia literally stay the course. You know, whatever that plan is, you can't deviate. You know, just like if you're in the NBA, you're playing against the best players, you're playing against Giannis. You know what I mean? He might come out and get 21 and 8 in the first half, but you got to stay the course. You got to stay the course, because eventually you're going to have to follow him and put him on the free throw line, and he might make a mistake. We haven't seen Tank make that mistake yet. But if Garcia can hang around a little bit, that hand speed, the reach, Tank having to work his way in, there's a high chance that Tank there's a probability that he could make a mistake. But I don't think Garcia can knock Tank out. That's the only problem. You know, like, I think he can win a decision, but I don't see him knocking him out. Was that?
I'm trying to get the odds, but for some reason the website.
But besides, I brought up Spence and Crawford. So besides that, this is the fight right now. This is the fight in boxing right now. So I think with Garcia having the low experience, like I mentioned, the low amount of fights, you know, I think that's something that could come back to bite him, because that arena is gonna be electric. You know, it's easy to get caught up in the moment.
Vegas, I mean, Vegas in of itself is just, I mean, you'll hear me talk about Vegas. I love Vegas. I think every year Vegas deserves 3 major sporting events. Either the NCAA tournament, can you imagine the gamblers? I think there needs to be 2 or 3 boxing matches. So I think boxing to get their I think the Pro Bowl should just permanently be in Vegas. Maybe even a draft. I mean, I think just Vegas is just such an adult playground kind of city. Can you show up and do the presser and go back to your hotel room and just eat whatever your diet is? Can you do the presser, or do you do the presser? Do you do Floyd Mayweather's podcast or interview? Do you go to a dinner at this place? Do you go to Mayweather's strip club? Do you go to this restaurant's opening? Like, can you get to Vegas Monday? Because you know that the press junket is going to have your schedule jam-packed.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be in Vegas 4 or 5 days. Can you get there and stay the course? Can you get there, do the interview with ESPN, or do the interview with Showtime, or do the interview with whoever you have to do the interview with, and then go back, get your sleep, go work out, go back to get your sleep? Do you bring all your boys with you? Do you have them staying on the same floor? Are they in a different part of the hotel so you can get your piece? How do you manage all the ancillary stuff that goes around? Because I heard it from what's the boy named Ortiz after he lost to Anthony Ruiz after he lost to Joshua.
Yeah.
He was like, after I beat Joshua, I just was on this high. Like, I was going everywhere. People wanted to interview me. I was going to Mexico. I was going on vacation. I was buying shots of tequila. I was eating this food. I was doing everything, because it wasn't like he was like super tight fit in the fight against Joshua. So in his mind, I can keep doing what I've been doing. I'm the heavyweight champ. And he goes out there in his next fight and he loses. So are these guys looking at what those guys did? Because it's gonna take a lot. It takes a lot of focus, man. Vegas, man, it's easy to get distracted. All you gotta do is leave. You could be
sounds a lot like Buster Douglas. And Gervonta, my fellow Baltimorean, please don't get locked up before this fight.
Don't hit your woman. I know he had a
Please
problem.
don't get locked up.
Violence. You gotta get get under control. Like, and I know he shouldn't get under control for the sake of boxing, because he's a marquee. You got to get under control for the sake of your existence. So, like, who has the better camp? Who listens to who has the better voice in their ear? Is De La Hoya going to be able to tell Garcia, like, man, this is how big this moment is? Can he recall his Mayweather fight? Like, listen, the Mayweather fight, I did this or I didn't do this. Or the Trinidad, I did this or I didn't do this. Or the Fernando Vargas fight, like, oh, I was so locked in that all I did was sit in my dark hotel room and light up incense and candles and watch Dr. Phil. Whatever it is that you did,
yeah.
Is Garcia going to open his ears up and allow that information to come in? Is there anybody in Davis's camp that says, listen, cool, you can do the podcast from your room if you want to do a podcast. You don't have to go to this particular person's house, because there's always a lot of influencers in Vegas.
Right.
Real estate is cheap. There's going to be a lot of people in town for the fight. You don't need to go to this person's suite to do it. You could do it from here and be done. Eat your peanut butter sandwich or whatever. Get your rest. Like, because that's what it's going to be. Because your talent, your skills are already there. The way you get spread, like, what did you do the night before? What did you do the night before the Super Bowl? Oh, we were out hanging out, just trying to relax. We went to Topgolf. We were in bed by 8. Cool. Hey, yeah, we were out trying to relax, man. I hit up a promoter I know. He took us to a club and we got a booth. Nobody drank, but we were up late, cigar smoke, hookah smoke, girls, whatever the case may be. The dudes that went to Topgolf, they probably were in bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock, up for the morning walkthrough. Meanwhile, you're at a club at 1 a.m. Granted, yeah, you're not drinking, but are you going to be as refreshed at 8 or 9 a.m. as a guy who went to Topgolf, hung out, had his camaraderie? So, it's especially in boxing, like, round to round, you get hit too hard in one round, you might want to give up. You didn't get enough sleep. You didn't do this. You overcommitted yourself for interviews, trying to expose the fight. The fight's going to sell itself. You got to sell the fight once you're in the ring.
So, after this fight, depending on how it goes, we may get a trilogy out of this. Are there some other fighters out there that you'd like to see these guys get with?
I saw what I would like. I would like multiple fights with 8 to 10 different guys happen. Just like I still want to see Joshua Wilder. I don't know what the record is. I just want to see it because even if you felt like they both fell off, essentially fell off at the same rate, but you still match 6'5" versus 6'6", 6'7", big marquee matchup. England versus Alabama, like revolutionary war style. Let's get this popping. I know Haney and Lomachenko. I think they're working on something. I think that's potentially May. I think it was a projected date. I don't know if it's solidified. With all this other sports news popping up, you got to make sure you get all the information. I don't know if that's a thing. I just think like the fights that fans want to see, Crawford, Spence, stop crashing cars. I mean, like, just keep yourself healthy for these fights. And I get that. I'm not trying to say you need to be ready for my entertainment, but for your sport. Pacquiao Mayweather, I was in Las Vegas for that fight that weekend. It was financial chaos that weekend, and it was glorious. The strip, like if people haven't been to Vegas, the strip is like 5 lanes each way. That intersection, MGM Grand, New York, Tropicana, where Tupac got shot, rest in peace. That is a 5-lane highway, like street each way. When I was coming back, we watched the fight on pay-per-view at a friend's house for a little party. When I was coming back to our hotel, because we were staying at the Luxor, when I came off the interstate, it was brake lights all the way up one way, and it was headlights the other way. It was packed chaos. $3,000 to get a table at a bar, $175 to get in. I think Mayweather and Pacquiao split like $300 million in pay-per-view and purse. I mean, it was chaos. And all it was that these two dudes kept the buzz up. You got to make this fight happen. You got to make the next fight happen. You got to make the trilogy happen. You got to make it happen quick. It got to be 18 months. I'm not trying to be waiting around 2025 for the third fight. And then you got to get Haney Lomachenko. Once they fight, maybe you flip that. You guys meet at 140, whatever it is, because you're going to drive. The price of the brick will go up if you're consistent. Don't argue over, 60-40 on the initial purse. Listen, get the pay-per-view money. Get that money. Don't be concerned that it might be $100 million fight and this guy might get 57 and you get 43. Do the fight at 57 and 43. Next one, you do 51, 49, whatever the case may be. But people are going to want to see the fight a second time around. But if you're only concerned with the fact that if I get knocked out, we won't get the rematch, the fight's going to look boring. You're going to dance around for 36 minutes, and people are like, I flew out to Vegas for this. I paid.
Yeah. I would like to see Shakur Stevenson get involved, and of course there's Teofimo Lopez. So, there's some fights out there that can be had, I think that at this point, I agree with Wilder and Joshua just on the fact that I think those dudes legitimately just don't like each other or they don't respect each other at the very least. So I think
we care more about it than they do.
Maybe.
What? I was talking about this in 2017. I was talking about this Joshua Wilder fight. It's 2023.
So who's around that could beat Fury?
His fights aren't that entertaining. Like he wins. They say he's technical, but really what it feels like, he's a tactician where he just basically punches and lays on you, because the Wilder was not a great boxer. We've seen videos we posted in the group where it's like his punch combination, just like the fluidity of it is just not there. You see Mayweather hit the bag, You see Stevenson shadow boxing. You see Garcia hitting the bag. You see these other guys, even Joshua for that fact. You see them like putting combinations together. Wilder didn't have that. So Wilder needs to brawl with someone. Joshua looks like a brawler. Fury just leaned on his neck a lot in each one of those fights, leaned on his back, pushed him against the ropes, put all of his, he probably walked into the ring like 270 pounds, and he just leaned on Wilder. I think Wilder was fighting at like 230, and I think in another fight, I think he fought like under 220. And you got this other dude leaning. So I don't think technically it wasn't aesthetically pleasing.
I watch Tyson Fury fight as long as I get to see him sing afterwards. That's my favorite part of the fight.
Man, I think the last time he did that, I was like, I'm a big fan with it, but I'm like, don't do it.
So Raf, I guess free agency officially starts tonight at midnight.
The tampering,
but we got the we got the tampering going on, the legal tampering. So Aaron Rodgers got a list for the Jets.
Yo, this guy is like, I get it. You've played well, but at this point, I've heard this phrase a lot, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna get some pushback. Oh, he's bona fide first ballot Hall of Famer. How? What makes him first ballot? Tell me two things that you can say definitively he's a first ballot Hall of Famer to the point where teams are jumping through these kind of hoops for him.
The media.
That's it. And I think he's good. But like we read off the stat last week, it was like before the 2021, maybe before the 2022 season, he was like 0-42 against teams with winning records if he was down in the fourth quarter. Like if he started the fourth quarter down, it's like your first ballot Hall of Famer. You shouldn't be 0-42 in any winning category at all. I think
hasn't won the Super Bowl since, or hasn't gone to the Super Bowl since he's won it.
Since my 14-year-old was one. My 14-year-old was born 8 pounds, 8 ounces, 20 inches long. He is now 5'10", 170 pounds, and Aaron Rodgers hadn't been to the Super Bowl.
Hey, the last time since Aaron Rodgers has won the Super Bowl, I've been stationed at 3 different bases and lived in 4 different cities.
I've deployed 3 or 4 times to. No, I've been to Korea, UAE 3 times. I got promoted twice, retired, got rehired.
You know what I mean? You know what I mean?
Multiple kids.
But he got a list.
It's just.
Did you see the list?
I didn't see the list. This is the first time I got the list.
So hold on. Let me pull this up so to make sure I got everything. I got most of it. Let's make sure I got all of it. So he wanted Lazard.
Okay, got that.
Which the Jets, the Jets did get Lazard this afternoon. 4 years, $44 million. He wanted Odell Beckham. Which is I guess that's a good request, right? Like you want Odell Beckham. I can understand that. He wants Randall Cobb. So I'm like, is he just trying to bring Green Bay? And then he wants Mercedes Lewis. So that was the list. Mercedes Lewis.
One offensive rookie of the year that's already there. Where you gonna put him?
I don't know, but this is what the man said that he wanted. And he wants Odell Beckham and he wants Lazard, which they got. So first of all,
tells his story. I'm sure.
Who the hell do you think you are?
That's the thing. People have given him this leverage. People have given him this Vin Diesel Fast and the Furious contract negotiation leverage. And I love those Fast and the Furious movies. But I liked them when they started becoming super ridiculous, when they were like basically turning into superheroes. And Vin Diesel wasn't in a couple of them. So he
went out of space.
He comes back and was like, I want $30 million. And they're like, I get that you're a part of this and you are But it's like, what makes you think we should just automatically give you $30 million? Like, why is that a demand? I give it if it's a request. Rob Downey Jr., they want you want to come back and do the Iron Man. Okay, I want $75 million. He has that leverage because in every other movie he was getting that type of money. The money was generated, billions of dollars being made. Aaron Rodgers done nothing for the Jets. He's coming into a division where Buffalo trades at this point a third round pick and a backup tight end. You might get Derrick Henry. So now Josh Allen's not throwing his shoulder and the elbows into people on these little scrambles. It's like, okay, cool. Give it to the 240-pound dude who's just as big as Josh Allen standing behind him, and just let Josh stand there and just put his hands up like a touchdown. Or
Miami just got Jalen Ramsey.
Miami just got Jalen Ramsey. They're probably gonna get Tom Brady. You heard it here first. He's down there. All he has is a cat and his daughter. Like, his daughter loves him. He can have somebody take care of the cat. So, granted, I don't want Tom Brady to come back, but you can easily be in a position of where you are third in your division and be playing well. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So it's not like a matter of like, oh, you're third in the NFC South. You're probably playing terrible. You're probably 4-9 after 13 games, and you're third in the NFC South. The Jets could be, after 10 games, they could be, 6-4, 5-5, and playing well, but lose a game here to the Patriots, is just have their number, or they lose a game to Buffalo because they have their.
Yeah, the Patriots have an offensive coordinator now.
And then you got this offensive coordinator who might not be wrapped in, because he literally had to hire another coach to help him manage with his coaching responsibilities. It's like me having somebody else in this room trying to help me do the podcast. They're like, listen, I'm figuring it out on my own. We're figuring it out on our own together. So it's like, I can't hire another person. Like, yeah, you done podcasts before. Hey, man, give me some cues or hold up some cue cards. It's like, why am I here if I got to hire somebody to do my job for me? And then he got fired because of it, and then you hire him right back. So I think they're a little delusional in thinking that just stacking offensive side of the ball with these players, because you got to figure out, you got young players that are already there, and one guy was offensive rookie of the year. Odell Beckham Jr. I like him. I met him. He came here on base. He seems like a real nice guy. People who talk about him say they really like him. Teammates really like him. But it is a draw. He is going to draw attention. He is going to draw energy. So is Garrett Wilson open, but Odell Beckham is the number one read on this route, and Aaron just puts it up? Maybe he makes a spectacular catch. Maybe he's incomplete on 3rd and 7. And Wilson like, yo, I'm running this dig route. I'm wide open, 12 yards.
So, you know what I'm confused about? That's all Jalen Ramsey went for? A 3rd round pick and a tight end?
Yo, man, 3rd round pick and a backup tight end. Not even Gesicki. No one. You and I are fans of teams that are struggling to put winning seasons together. That's a good way to put, Washington Commanders fan, Atlanta Falcons fan. I'm like, if he went for a 3rd and a tight end, that means at a minimum, the Rams ask for a little bit more than that.
That means that he should be he should be a member of the Washington Commanders right now. That's what that means.
He should be a member of any of the other 31 teams. If he went for a 3rd and a tight end, is like, so that, and I was talking to the guy in my office, like, that means nobody called. Because I'm personally thinking, like, I'll give you a 2nd. I'll give you a 2nd and a 4th for the number 3 rated cornerback in the NFL. Even if you have to pay him, but if you have the cap money, it's like, okay, do I draft a guy and pay him peanuts and hopefully it works out? Or do I say, you know what, I'm going to get us through $17 million to lock down one half of the field? Like, what makes more sense? So, like, the fact that he went for a 3rd and a backup tight end is evident to me that, because we posted in our group 5-6 days ago that he was on the trading block. So if that was a rumor last Wednesday, if that was a rumor that he was on the trading block, and then the information comes out a couple of days ago that he went for a 3rd and a backup tight end, that means either Los Angeles didn't reach out to anybody or no one thought it was real except for Miami.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe he told them that he wanted to go to Miami, and or maybe the league, people around the league, knew that he wanted to go back to the state of Florida, and maybe some leverage was lost that way. That's the only thing I can come up with, and I'm making that up.
There's a hub in Atlanta. They fly from Atlanta to Miami all week long. He could have gone home and seen his people. They could have like or had him on the other side of the crowd. You draft this guy out of Clemson to be an edge rusher, or maybe you move up and you get Jalen Carter from Georgia. You make things happen. I shouldn't be in my room planning out these things and trying to make these moves if they couldn't figure it out.
Speaking of Atlanta, get your hand off my hiney, baby. Yeah.
$20 million for 2 years for backup for a rookie that you're not paying $2 million to. I think our GM went to some Ivy League school. I think he's like a Princeton or a Harvard or a Brown guy. Yeah, I don't understand. I don't get it. I don't get it.
Shout out to Princeton making the NCAA tournament. Yeah, but I mean, Heineke, I guess, is an insurance policy just in case Ritter doesn't perform or whatever the case. Like maybe down the road, if the Falcons can get to say 6-6 in that division, but Ritter isn't looking good or he gets hurt, maybe Heineke is the vet that comes off the bench and brings the spark that gets the Falcons into the playoff.
Yeah, I'd rather, honestly, at this point, I don't know. I think the is that I talked about this before with my other guys I talk sports with. Atlanta will go get a guy that, let's say, had 11 sacks for Chicago. Defensive end, he had 11 sacks for Chicago. He's a free agent. Atlanta will get him 4 years, $60 million. Right? He comes to Atlanta, he gets 4 sacks. And it's like, why is he not producing? Well, in Chicago, he had 2 325-pound defensive tackles eating up blocks, getting double team on this percentage of their pass plays. So he was one-on-one with a tackle or one-on-one with a swim move with a guard, whatever the case may be, no chip from the tight end. And he got a few extra sacks because of the presence. Well, they don't tailor the guy. So now you got Jesse Bates from Cincinnati. It's like, okay, was he effective because Cincinnati's pass rush and linebacker play? Because Atlanta doesn't have the same caliber linebacker play. So now you have this guy out there. If he's really good at diagnosing plays, cool. But seeing that Jalen Ramsey went for a third in the tight end, I'm like, yo, hey, Los Angeles, what do y'all want for Aaron Donald? Because Aaron Donald pushing up the middle, now the safety that we gave $65 million to, maybe he's more effective because the pass comes out a little earlier, or he gets a couple of tip passes, or maybe he can play down in the box because Aaron Donald's eating up 2 and 3, blockers. It's like you can't just make like the move is like, oh, I'm gonna get this new car, I'm gonna put good rims on it, I'm gonna put new tires on it, and put 10 on it. But like, yeah, what about the brakes? You have the brake disc, you change oil. Like you gotta put it all together to make the whole thing work. I don't want it flashy because you spent $65 million on this safety, and you spent $20 million on the backup quarterback. You spent $20 million on the backup quarterback that they let go to keep Sam Howell. So it's not like you got a free agent guy that was a hot commodity on the market. You're paying $20 million for a guy that probably shouldn't get any more than 8.
I'm going to stop just short of giving the Cowboys a compliment. But Stephon Gilmore, wow.
I mean, when you get moved around that much, it might be a sign that you're trading on your name more than you're trading on your talent.
I mean, he still had a good season last year. I mean, he just played in Indy, but you got Diggs on the other side. So, like at the very least, you get somebody that potentially helps him out from a tutelage standpoint, if nothing else. But Detroit, is on a corner spree. They picked up Cam Sutton from the Steelers. They picked up Emmanuel Mosley from the 49ers. But the team that I want to focus on, obviously, we've talked about this team a lot during the course of our podcast. But the Chicago Bears, after everything they got from Carolina last week, they turn around and picked up TJ Edwards and Edmonds from Buffalo. Like, I don't know. The NFC North is going to be tough. Green Bay just might finish last.
They're making moves. I think they're going to be exciting to watch. I picked Minnesota last year. I think people really like Kirk Cousins. They have to be the favorite coming in this year. But
yeah, I am the leader of the Kirk Cousins Appreciation Society.
If Chicago, somebody broke this down the other day. I believe it was. I want to give him credit. I don't know if it was Shannon Sharp. I think it might have been Rich Eisen. I can't remember. It was somebody I was watching. I want to give credit to them for this, but like I said, I can't remember who it was. But what he said was adding DJ Moore to Chicago allows every other wide receiver to fall into their natural position. Mm-hmm. So yes. You Claypool, who wants to be a number one, but can thrive as a number two. Mooney, who was their number one in the slot, taking the top off the defense, it makes it so much easier. And that you think about like, oh, is it just a matter of talent? Because people talk about Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen, that rise. And I was thinking about it like I was sitting about like, you know what? It's like the wide receiver will probably tell, like DJ Moore will say, okay, all right, on this post route, if you see me and my right hip is even with the guy, let it go, because I'm going to beat him to the spot. If it's single high coverage, put it here. If it's double, I'm going to cut it off here. And I think wide receivers can tell the quarterback, like, listen, if you see this body movement, you can make your adjustments based off that. So I was watching Justin Fields a lot of the time, and he wouldn't throw the ball. It was like, he would switch his hip like he wanted to throw it. But I think with DJ Moore, he's, well, listen, man, if I get him on my hip and on this out route, you know what's the out route? 10-yard out, 15-yard out. Oh, let it go. Like, I'm going to get to this ball. And I think
it doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt to have Cole Kmet either. So we got Rashad Penny. We got Rashad Penny going to Philly. So is Miles Sanders for sure gone?
The problem is the NFLPA, like I said, they got to look out for these running backs and structure something to where these guys can get deals, because they are treating these guys who are basically human battering rams like cast-offs. So you got to give these guys their yeah, okay, I'm doing it. I'm working. Got a visitor here. So they're treating these guys like, oh, we can just get another one. And it's so unfair. But the problem with that is Miles Sanders, no matter where he goes, he's not going to be able to get the money, like the long-term money that he really, really needs. Because every team has this philosophy that I can get a guy in the fourth round that can do what you do.
So is it safe to say that Josh McDaniels is not a fan of marriage?
Yo, Josh McDaniels lives in the worst city for a guy like him, because he is apparently a gambler. He wants to gamble. He wants to gamble in relationships. I think his ego will tell him, like, listen, man, you're up 2,000. Leave the table. Nah, I got this game figured out. I'm about to make it 10,000. And now he's 5,000 in a hole a week later. Because, like I talked about Darren Waller. Darren Waller just got married to Kelsey Plum, a Las Vegas Aces guard in WNBA. He was a Las Vegas Raider, just got married less than 2 weeks ago, and they traded him to New York Giants all the way across country. Yes, the flights from Vegas to Newark, 4 hours. 4 hours and 20 minutes. Easy flight, I get it. But why would you trade a guy when you just got Jimmy Garoppolo, and Jimmy made a living throwing the ball to kills?
Yeah, he ain't throwing it deep.
Not at all. So you get rid of him. You can eat it if you want. Yeah. Okay. That
Yeah, like Garoppolo is the tight end is supposed to be his best friend, along with having Josh Jacobs. So you would think that Darren Waller would be the guy that you would want on the team, because I don't know how happy Devontae Adams is going to be if Garoppolo ends up being the starter. So hopefully they're still in the quarterback market looking for that at least.
Oh, they're done. They're done with their quarterback market. Josh McDaniels
Oh,
thinks
that's it, huh?
he can make Garoppolo because it's what Belichick started. Belichick drafted Garoppolo in the second round when they thought Tom Brady was done. Josh McDaniels, just like Matt Patricia, just like Charlie Weiss, just like Joe Judge, just like all these guys who are disciples of Belichick, think they can operate very similar to the way these disciples of Floyd Mayweather think they can operate. Like, listen, certain people in the history of Earth are one of one. You can dislike it. You can think you're on that person's level. There's going to be evidence to support that you are not it. Belichick is a one of one kind of coach. Mayweather, one of one kind of fighter. Jordan, one of one kind of player. LeBron, Tom Brady. I mean, the list goes on and on. Tiger Woods. There are certain people that no matter what, you can look at your numbers and they can be close and they can be skewed and the argument can be made. Mm-hmm. But certain people, Michael Jackson, move the needle differently than other players. Other coaches, it's not a bunch of Nick Sabans. Kirby Smart went back-to-back years. If he has a bad year next year, his recruiting class the following year will not be as good as the one that he had last year going to a championship. Nick Saban can lose 2 games a year for the next 3 years and still have the top recruiting class because he's Nick Saban, because the way he does things, because he is one of one. Mm-hmm. Josh McDaniels thinks that he is 1A to Belichick's one of one, and he's not. So they got Garoppolo in there. They think they're going to make it work. And the first thing you do is get rid of the only person in the middle of the field that could take attention away from Hunter Renfrow in the slot. So now I don't need what tight end do I need to worry about? Moreau or whatever these guys are still in? I don't need to worry about him. I can match him up with any one of my cover linebackers or my cover safeties. And now Renfrow is a great route runner. It's not going to do him any good if Derwin James and Bosa are just standing in his window because they don't have to worry about Waller helping out with the blocks. They don't have to worry about Waller running the seam. I mean, it just seemed like, I don't know if it was a money move, but it was a bad move. Considering like,
what about the
third or fifth? They didn't even get like a player to replace him.
Mm-mm. Yeah, and Stephon Gilmore went for a 5th round pick. So the Texans, they picked up Robert Woods, from division rival Tennessee. They picked up Noah Brown, so I like both of those pickups if Woods can come back to form, because obviously he was coming off the injury. He didn't look so good this year. Noah Brown probably had his
Bye, guys.
Yeah. And Noah Brown had his best season so far, with the Cowboys. So, it's a start. But what I like, good old DeMeco Ryans went out and got his boy Jimmy Ward. So, that was a good move.
I think when you have a defensive coach, I think he's going to lean heavy. Please. He's going to lean heavy defensively. And the trade up to number 1, rumor has it Carolina's looking at C.J. Stroud because I guess they felt like he wasn't going to be there at 9, which is likely. So you get Bryce Young. You got to get him a 6'4" target in some form, either in tight end or just a big wide receiver, 6'3.5". You got to get him one of those guys. So if you don't have that guy, then you're going to be in a situation where you're going to hope the defense can keep teams under 20 points. And then maybe your rookie wide receiver can rookie quarterback can make plays.
And they still have Brandon Cooks too.
Once again, he's like 5'10". They're about to have the shortest starting lineup in the NFL aside from their offensive lineman. Your quarterback's 5'10". Brandon Cooks maybe measures at 5'11". Robert Woods, maybe he measures 6 foot. Noah Brown, maybe he measures 6 foot. It's like you have a young quarterback who's not very tall. I don't think you have a great offensive line. So it's like you're gonna have to either package some pieces together and bring in a wide receiver, or I don't think you can get like Odell any kind of like top free agent.
So they did
something.
So they did pick up Shaq Mason from Tampa. So they got a lineman there. But the one that stood out to me, you know, Sam Darnold to San Francisco.
I don't understand the Sam Darnold love.
Apparently, from what I was reading earlier, Shanahan loved him coming out the draft.
But he also ball until his time in the fourth quarter to win the Super Bowl. He loves
Sam Darnold. I don't know if I would invest in a quarterback that sees ghosts.
He's not good at his job as an NFL quarterback. You have two opportunities.
Or maybe Shanahan, you know, as the whisperer, you know, like the NFC version of Sean Payton. Maybe he can unlock something out of him that we haven't seen yet. I don't think it's there, but you know,
just needs to admit that trading up to get Trey Lance was a bad move. Not just sticking with Jimmy Garoppolo was a bad move. He could have waited and gotten Trey Lance without giving up 3 first-round picks. And it wouldn't be this pressure on him, the GM, and the player to perform, because no one thought he was a top quarterback until the rumors came out that it was either Mac Jones or Trey Lance at 3 for San Francisco. It's that same thing. That some guys are one-of-one head coaches. Shanahan, I think he has a great scheme. I think he's probably an awesome offensive coordinator, and I think he could have cut his teeth with that for years. But as a head coach, he is mediocre, subpar without Jimmy Garoppolo, and no one thinks Jimmy Garoppolo is a top-flight quarterback. So you mean to tell me that your best chance of winning is with this average quarterback, and if you don't have him, you are a terrible coach? It doesn't compute. Like, you can't be a great coach when you have your starting quarterback and then Brock Purdy comes in and it inflates the numbers. Those throws weren't great. It was a lot of throws that he was making in those games that were like, ooh, that's pretty close. So I just think Shanahan they took Johnny Manziel in the first round.
So were there any other signings so far that stood out to you?
Kansas City not paying their current left tackle top money, but getting a tackle from Jacksonville and paying him $20 million
to Washington
to bring him in. I thought that was a little. I like I said, I don't know if these negotiations are personal, and I think it's wise for players and agents and teams to not let all that information out. Mm-hmm. But if you can give a guy who wasn't on your Super Bowl roster $20 million a year, I don't see why you can't give a guy that was on your roster 23, 25 maybe, or even just that straight up, just give him that same 20, but give it to him for 5 years instead of 4. You know, guaranteed 55 or 60 of it. You know, it just doesn't seem like it doesn't compute to me that they made that move. Like I said, the Darren Waller Vegas move doesn't really add up for me. Like I said, we talked about the Falcons move. I think Carolina's trade, I don't think that was wise, because you have a new coach, and I get that the concept of marrying a new coach with a young quarterback is ideal. I just don't know why you give up your number 1 wide receiver to do that. You could have given up your 9 this year and whatever pick you get next year to get Lamar Jackson. So if you figure I give you, hey, Baltimore, I want to sign Lamar, 4 years, $200 million guaranteed. I'm going to give you my 9 this year, and I'm going to give you my first round pick next year. Lamar Jackson, 75% of his wins. So he's 73 at the 10 games. You got 17 games. You're looking at 12-5, 13-4, somewhere in that range. You're going to win NFC South. At 12-5, you win NFC South off the rip.
Well, I think something that stood out to me.
You drafted like in the 20s. So you give Baltimore a 9 this year and a 27 next year for Lamar Jackson, and you keep DJ Moore, but you give all that up to move up to get Bryce Young, and you have no weapon for him to throw to. Or this crowd. Maybe Bryce Young.
Yeah.
Maybe. But you have no weapons.
Yeah. Well, what stood out to me is I'm always amazed at how San Francisco just adds to their defense every single year. You know, even without D'Amico Ryans, they went out and got Javon Hargrave from the Eagles. So that's TJ Edwards and Hargrave that the Eagles have lost now. They did keep James Bradbury, you know, of Super Bowl holding fame. You know, they did keep him. So that probably means that Johnson Gardner's on his way out. So, Philly's going to.
The Twitter post with him, like the superimposed in the Cincinnati jersey. He said he liked it per Twitter.
Yeah, so Philly's going to look completely different next year. And I know that this one is probably under the radar and nobody probably truly cares. But I'm interested to see where Adam Thielen ends up, you know, because I think that not only are you getting a consistent receiver, but I think you're going to get a locker room leader as well. So, like, somebody, I'm not saying that Houston should get him, but I'm just saying some team that's in that same level that Houston is on could do really well to get Adam Thielen just for the locker room.
How close is Minneapolis to Kansas City? He's a minute.
It ain't that far.
It ain't that far. I think that's a move. I like honestly, I'm a big fan of any Kansas City wide receiver move because I think Mahomes is just like a top-notch quarterback, obviously. But I think any free agent wide receiver is probably looking around like, I got 2 years left, 3 years left of what they feel is their prime. I can go to Kansas City and make some moves. Like I said, I like what a lot of teams are doing. I like guys getting paid. I like the guaranteed money coming out. I like teams not being afraid to cut a guy. I'm just not a big fan of my team that I cheer for. Just kind of willy-nilly signing guys. Like, listen, your defensive backfield is irrelevant if you're pass. You got to get the pass rush right. So I need Atlanta to call Los Angeles and make an Aaron Donald deal or somebody. I need to see that because if they give up,
I do like
a song, then I'm like, cool. Like, what are you gonna give for Aaron Donald?
I do like Washington picking up Cody Barton from Seattle. I do like Seattle getting the guy from Denver. His name's slipping me right now, defensive tackle. But also I was shocked. I guess I shouldn't be shocked, but Seattle letting Quentin Jefferson go. So that's going to be a big fish out there that maybe Atlanta can go after. And, you know, but overall, free agency has been great so far. But please tell me that when I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to hear some kind of Lamar Jackson news.
You won't. And I think I was talking about this earlier. There's two ways you can look at this. From us on the outside, we look at it 2 ways. They could have put the exclusive franchise tag on him and essentially made him play for Baltimore. But they put the non-exclusive tag on him. And we can look at it like this. They put the non-exclusive because they say, hey, we respect you as a player, but our hard line in the saying is we're not going to guarantee this much money. So we don't want to lock you in to playing for us for $43 million if there's an opportunity that another team is willing to give you your $200+ million guarantee. So we'll offer the $32.5 million. You can still continue to negotiate because they can come to terms with make a deal before, like, I don't know, there's probably like some drop dead date, maybe in July or August or something like that. So they still can come to a deal. But I think it can be viewed as like, hey, we respect you. We have to draw the line at we can't pay you $231 million guaranteed. I heard another point of view from a former executive. He was on a Rich Eisen show. And what he said is that when you're a quarterback and you're 23, 24, 25, and you get a deal and it's 5 years, 200 million, and only 100 is guaranteed, you're more than likely to get that whole 200 million because you're in your mid 20s. You're gonna play through it. If you're healthy, you'll play. So you're gonna get the 100 million guaranteed, the signing bonus, whatever the case may be. But the likelihood of you getting that whole deal is like 95% probability. So I've been like all anime, like, oh, you should get this whole deal. But I'm like, okay, if that's the case, if you're mathematically 95% likely to still get your whole deal, are you dying on a hill that you don't need to die on? So that's the thing with Lamar. And I think teams saying that they're out, they're probably out for now. But if you really think about it, like I said, the Carolina scenario, like you could have given up 9 and essentially 27 next year, got Lamar Jackson, paid him that money because you're not paying Christian McCaffrey anymore. Atlanta, you could have given up 8, win the NFC South with 10 or 11 wins, and now you give up 8 and 27 next year. So it's like everyone's giving up first round picks to move up to draft quarterbacks from college just so they don't have to pay them any big money. But meanwhile, you're depleting your draft capital, i.e. San Francisco. Their draft capital is completely depleted. Los Angeles, F those picks. Yeah, now you out here trading third-round picks for top 3 cornerbacks because you don't have any leverage.
Well, and allegedly, Stafford's on the trade block as well.
Who's going to want Stafford?
Somebody.
There's nowhere to put him. There's no team. Like, where do you put a starting quarterback currently in the NFL landscape of that age? He's a starter, he's not a backup. Mm-hmm. What team off the top of your head without?
I mean, he could be the backup plan if Aaron Rodgers falls through.
And with the Jets, but I think
if
Aaron Rodgers, I think that Aaron Rodgers doesn't have that much leverage because he knows that the Jets are his real only plan this year. Because I think
Tennessee
might cut him. Tennessee, they still haven't made a decision on Tannehill. Mm-hmm. You can't trade Tannehill for Stafford because LA doesn't have another old quarterback. So where does he go? Can't go to Cleveland.
Tampa. Even though the reports are that they want Baker Mayfield.
I think Baker Mayfield's people put that report out. But I would say that makes sense. Tampa makes sense. I think any quarterback that wants an opportunity to win their division should go to NFC South, or Indy doesn't have a quarterback yet, and they're 4th. They're not going to give up their 4th overall pick.
No.
So I say Indy, you run it back one more time. You can't do it again. You can't do it 4 years in a row. Yeah, so it's tough. I don't I think the Rams hubris flew too close to the sun, get their wings burned off, and now they should just tear it all down and take whatever you can get, whatever you can move. Maybe Arizona, trading within division. Arizona rides him for 1 year. Kyler Murray heals up completely. I mean, that sounds like, I don't know how much money you want to be paying to the quarterback position. I don't know when Kyler Murray's extension kicks in, but I mean, it's not many places where teams that need a starting quarterback are willing to take an older starting quarterback.
Well, you know what? If something does happen with Lamar Jackson, he could be the replacement in Baltimore. But you know what? That is our free agency talk. So now it is time for the world renowned. Get it off my chest. And I'm going to go first this time because Raf got another heavy one for us. So real quick, I mentioned in our college football playoff episode that I hate the word overrated. So what I hate is the overreaction to every single thing. So a couple of weeks ago, or last week, whatever it was, we talked about the NBA MVP. And in the moment, I was like, hey, I like Jason Tatum. Time has passed. Jason Tatum ain't in that conversation no more because Boston has slipped, and they just haven't been looking good ever since we had that conversation. But now Nikola Jokic, the analytical assassin, Denver's lost again tonight. So they're going through a spell right now. They're still first in the West because they were 6 games up, so they're not going to probably lose the first seed or anything like that. But what I'm hating is the talk of a guy who scored 37, 20, and 11 talking about he's not the MVP because they lost to the Nets. He's not the MVP because they lost to the Spurs. Can I tell you a secret? When the Bulls went 72-10, one of those losses was to the Toronto Raptors. And guess what? They were an expansion team. They didn't have no Vince Carter yet. They had some Alvin Williams, some Antonio Davis. This happens in the NBA. When you play 82 games, there are going to be nights where you get beat. There's going to be a 3-game losing streak somewhere in there just because you're going through, as Raf put it earlier, ebbs and flows. I'm sure that they're trying to get to the finish line. All these teams trying to get to the finish line. So you could catch somebody slipping at this time of year. But if Jokic was your MVP or if Jokic was the MVP, losing to the Nets doesn't make him not the MVP. So if Embiid comes out here and they lose to, say, Portland tomorrow, is Embiid not the MVP now? Like, we're just going to hand the MVP day to day on what happened in the latest game? It doesn't work like that. It's a whole body of work. The only reason I didn't have Embiid MVP, as we talked about, was because of the amount of games that he missed relative to the competitors for the MVP. So at this stage, I could see him winning the MVP, but I don't see anything that Jokic did individually that would cause him to lose the MVP. So stop taking 1-game samples just because a team went 9-0 and then they went to Norman, Oklahoma and lost to Oklahoma and lost their first game of the season. They are not overrated. It's just tough to win in Oklahoma. If the NBA playoffs start and Denver gets to the Western Conference Finals and they bow out in 7 to Phoenix or whatever, they weren't overrated. They made the Western Conference Finals. So stop using these small samples to come up with these ludicrous takes as if the other 81 games didn't happen. That's it. Just wanted to say that. So, Raf, it's all yours.
All right. So to piggyback off of that, it's a term we used to hear a lot in our military careers. The commander come up and say something, the shirt would come up. The piggyback off of that, and the chief would come up. The piggyback off of that. You used to be annoyed by it, but I'm going to do it now. The NBA MVP race last week had a different turn, according to a couple of pundits on ESPN. JJ Redick, Kendrick Perkins. It's been a big talk for about a week, which most things are. Most things are like a good buzz for about a week. So Perk's argument was that so many of the NBA voters for the MVP are white, and that there's only been 3 guys who weren't top 10 in scoring to win MVP, and each one of them happened to be white since 1990. So if we do the math, 1990 was 32, 33 years ago. Depends on like at what point of year you're talking about. So it's at least 33 years ago when the voting occurred. I think that's JJ Redick immediately calling him on it, like, yo, you're trying to imply that race plays a role in these guys winning MVP as if they don't have a case for MVP. Steve Nash was the leader of the most efficient offense, the D'Antoni offense, that everyone thought was going to be the new norm. They won a bunch of games. He was the orchestrator of that. In games where he wasn't playing or when he wasn't on the floor, the offense did not look the same. So the best offense in basketball did not look the same when he wasn't on the floor. So that's the argument. Yes, I personally probably would have picked Kobe because Kobe dunked on him pretty aggressively one year, or I would have picked LeBron because I just personally think the way they impacted the game from a get on my back backpack kind of approach, I personally like that more versus the I'm going to lead you by telling you how to manage all the stuff going on. Like, I'm going to get you here, get you there. So I think that pundits go to race, especially black pundits, go to race way too much, and then it loses when we have an actual case of race playing a greater factor than it should. You lose your leverage. You lose it because you used it for MVP voting. Like damn near every MVP in the NBA hasn't been black in the 75 years since it's been black dudes. ABA, your top scorers are black, your top rebounders are black, your top paid guys are black. There's almost no American-born white NBA players starting in the NBA. You have a few guys. I think Gordon Hayward was on the bench. JJ Redick was probably one of the last Mohicans. There's no more Mark Price. There's no Craig Elos, no Dan Marley, Tom Chambers. All these guys, they're all gone. They've basically been athleted out of the league. So they have a real argument. Say, yo, there's no more American white guys in the league. They're all foreign. So it's not a matter of just, oh, these guys are white and they're just voting for other white players. Dirk averaged like 26 points that year and ended up winning the championship over LeBron and the Heatles. So it wasn't like he wasn't a valid player that should earn MVP. I think these pundits have to stop going the race and playing the race card every single time something isn't going their way. Yes, I do not agree that simply because Jokic is the analytic assassin, he should automatically be the MVP. My argument is that in a game where you need him to get you 30, 35, 40 points, can he win it for you? Evidence is supporting that he can't. He can because it affects the game differently. Embiid can go out there and get you 20, 10, and 10 and wear out your entire defense and make it happen. Then he can also give you 44, 15, and 5 and be the same way. Whereas if Jokic is giving you 44 points, it might not be the same impact. Or he might not be able to guard another guy. He might give up 44 points. So that was my argument. That's a valid argument. You can't just be like, oh, because he's white, they're voting for him. Because it's like, I don't think white people in the media care that the NBA MVP is white. I don't think they rest their hat on the fact like, yeah, I didn't vote for the black guy and I'm happy that the MVP is white. I don't think they care that much. So when you try to invoke race, and JJ was like, yo, you're trying to imply one thing without saying it. Say it, show some facts, support it, support your argument. But most times you don't have a support for your argument. And when you really have one, because you bring up race all the time, people are going to pass you off. So the next time Perkins brings up race, like, listen, you better quantify and qualify that. Because last time you just threw out some information from 1990, even though in the 80s, Magic Johnson didn't lead the league in scoring. He won 3 MVPs. So it's just, I think the black pundit, I know you want to be the voice of black people, but you have to also still be the voice of reason. Black people were reasonable people. We're not sitting around here thinking that because Jokic is winning the MVP because he's white. He's winning the MVP because people love analytics. They love the non-competitive numbers because you're not looking at competitive numbers. You're looking at the overarching numbers. You're using that number to validate your argument, and he's winning because of that. They're like, oh, you don't need to be a top seed to win MVP. Yeah, because analytics have taken over sports. If you want to make an argument against analytics, I can rock with that because you have evidence to support that. You're feeling that 3 white dudes won the NBA MVP in 33 years. If that was flipped, if the NFL only had 3 black dudes win MVP in 33 years, you'd be like, you would try to use the race card then. So don't use it. And if you're going to use it, quantify it, qualify it, back it up. Stop jumping out here and just acting like you're taking arrows for everybody because, oh, you're black and you said it. We all supposed to believe it. No. Cut it out. Speak real facts, not your feelings, and stop playing the damn race card all the damn time. It's not that serious. Jokic is going to win the MVP because just like every major award in every major sport, if you start off the year and you're at top of the list and you don't do anything to fall from the top of the list, they're going to vote for you. Just like the Heisman. The quarterback from Tennessee wasn't going to go from not being on the list to Heisman winner if there's another guy who they came into the season projected to win the Heisman, didn't do anything to lose it. It's just a fact of the way the awards are written, the way they're voted on, the way all of this works out the same way. Kyrie Irving will be an all-star if he's averaging over 20 points no matter what he does to his team. LeBron will always be an all-star because people are going to vote for him. Steph Curry will always be an all-star no matter what his team's road record is. None of that stuff matters. De'Aaron Fox might have to work a little hard to be an all-star team. Same thing with MVP. If you come into this season and you're going to be considered an MVP candidate and you don't do anything to lose it, you're probably going to win it. It's not because he's white. I don't think the white writers care about the dude from Serbia winning as their feather in their cap. He's the analytical warrior. They go with analytics. I don't think they look at anything else other than analytics, wins and losses. So cut it out.
Well, you know, like the thing that bothers me, I think, is it's a regular season award. You know, we have 82 games to figure this out, and people are trying to throw their postseason narratives onto the regular season award. So with that being said, the thing that hurts Dirk, I think, is his team won 67 games. He won MVP, and then they lost in the first round to the 8th seed. So I think that's just one of those things that, like, people hold against him. Nash never made the finals, you know, like, so people are looking at it that way, whereas most other MVPs, you know, have at least been to the finals or got to a conference final. Jokic got to a conference final, but I think that was more Jamal Murray than it was Jokic in that particular year, you know. So if this year they get to the Western Conference Finals, you can't even take that away from Jokic. Now, I do think just playing probability, there are probably some guys in the room that like to see the white guy come out on top. Just like you will never see no Filipinos until it's time for a Pacquiao fight. You know what I mean? That's just the way it is. You know, it's not necessarily racist, but there's a certain relatability that resonates with you. So, you know, the same reason that we wanted to see black quarterbacks sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, we knew that they were talented and we wanted that.
I get that in the same sense, but if you're gonna use the stat of 33 years and it's been 28 of them has been a black dude that won the award,
right?
Say that, oh, the white guys won because of the white voters. What about the other 28 years that you provided? Like, it just doesn't compute. It's like
damn race traders.
Yeah, so it's like I understand that race does factor into sports. People can say, oh, they're getting only thing that matters is green. Not all the time. I'm not saying people are racist. Like Nick Wright said it best. He's like, I'm not saying that if race plays a factor, doesn't mean that people are racist.
Right.
Just sometimes it does play a factor. You can't point out something particular and use a statistic like, hey, 5 out of 33 times white guys won this award and 80% of the voters are white, but the other 28 times out of 33 black dudes won it. I'm pretty sure right. Dirk's numbers were just as good in all of those years. It's just that the team success and everything else. Kobe only has 1 MVP. Shaq has 1. So it's not the defining element of the NBA. So to bestow this expectation that race plays such a grand factor in it, when statistically Jordan's 3rd year after he won it 2 years in a row, they were better than the year that he won it, but Barkley got the award. So it's like it's not an exact science. So to leverage this feeling that it's a race-based voting system is something that's clearly not even like, doesn't even make rational sense. And you're trying to say there's a racial objective to something that doesn't make rational sense is a poor argument. And I think it's a lazy argument. That's my big key. Is like, it's not, there's more arguments for what's wrong with the MVP versus white dudes winning it with white voters.
I can rock with that.
Yeah.
You know, and on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another episode of Sports Reports is Ordered. You know, I am Mike Wilson, Instagram, MLDub25, Twitter, 2Bit Reports. Where can they get you, Raf?
Find me on Twitter at Fear My Raf. You can also find us on Instagram, Sports Reports is Ordered. Like I said, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast. We appreciate everybody chiming in. Shout out to people down in Louisiana that chimed in. I had a guy go down there this week for TDY. He said he's been spreading the word. So we're national. We're trying to get the guys out in Japan have been rocking with us, so I respect everybody.
Yeah, we international. We got some Brussels. We got some Germany going on. We out there.
Doing big things. So I want to make sure everybody gets on board now, because when this bandwagon, this train starts rolling, I want everybody to say, I was on there from the beginning, and we want you to ride this whole wave with us. So we're on TV. We have our studio and everything else. Shout out to
Day ones
down back in 2023. So
day ones, we the ones. You know what I'm saying? But hey, we'll be back on Friday. You know what I'm saying? Until then, everything will be in your description. Like, review, rate us, hit us up on YouTube, leave some comments. Let's have a conversation. Especially, I want to hear thoughts about what Raf just talked about with the Get It Off My Chest. So we will be here Friday. Hope to see you then. Thank you for your support. And we love you, America.
We out.
We out.